Okay, I'm Charles Schwalauer, born April 7, 1928, came to Moorpark in 1962, and I have developed and am retired now, but I developed Citrus Ranch up in the Fairview, which is north of Moorpark.
I'm Jim Whitaker. Originally, our family came from New Mexico. I was born September the 3rd, 1924, and our family came to California in 1926 and purchased a hardware store, and have been here ever since. And that's about it.
Yeah, I'm Bart Miller. I was born in Santa Paula in 1921. Makes me 83 years old. I was postmaster in Moorpark for 20 years, and then I was promoted to Camarillo as postmaster, where I retired from. I live up on Peach Hill. That's about it.
Why don't you start by talking again about some of the people in town, some of the characters in town, or the people who are really important to Moorpark?
Well, there's two of them right there.
Three of us.
True, very true.
Well, you're going to have Andy Waters here later.
Mm-hmm.
That's certainly one of the early residents. And
Tell us about I.G. Tanner, because he's one who figures so prominently in a lot of the history.
well, you know, Tanner owned the building there on the corner
Yeah.
of High and Walnut Canyon.
Well, I got acquainted with IG when he was with the fire department. Volunteers in Moorpark, and I was a volunteer fireman, and Charlie Wilson and Paul Robb were the two firemen in town, and then IG was a honorary captain, I guess.
Yeah.
He used to be connected with the fire department some way.
And then you and Riley and who else were volunteers?
Oh. There was about 10 or 12 of us. We used to go up and practice. We saved every lot in town. You know, we didn't. We lost the house, but we saved a lot.
Yeah.
But they had a big siren up on the top of the firehouse, and they'd blow the siren, everybody'd run for the firehouse. I used to live on Moorpark Avenue, and there was a fire going south. The fire truck would stop in front of my house and pick me up, and away we'd go. But IG he loved the fire department. And IG's house on I guess the Walnut Canyon Road.
Yeah.
IG used to have a little compartment there. You could sit and watch the trains go by from his house, inside his house. Looked like a little caboose in there. He loved trains. And I guess IG used to own the service station, didn't he, James?
Yes, it was a garage and service station. He also sold for a couple of years some automobiles. He had a showroom next to the garage and the service station.
Huh.
That's
That
what-
building has had quite a history.
It also housed the the far north building. There's a different brick structure on the end. That was the supervisor's office and water department in there, and then the other, later the county rented it for a sheriff's station.
Oh, yeah.
And the sheriff and justice court was in there for a
In there
period.
where that beauty shop is or whatever it is.
Yeah,
Nail shop or something.
that was the supervisor's office.
Yeah.
And water department, they took care of both. Oh, I can add a little to Bart's recitation about IG and the fire department. It's earlier history than before Bart arrived. The reason IG was such a supporter of the fire department was he had the garage, and I never knew of him going on a vacation or anything, so he was here 365 days a year, 24 hours practically. So he housed the fire truck in the garage. And of course, when being he had the fire truck and the keys and kept it in shape. When they'd have a fire, well, he was first on the engine, and he was they kind of an official chief. And we used to make fun. They had a 32 Mac, no cab, all open, and it's a shame.
Wouldn't you give your eye teeth to have that now?
Oh, it was and it kept in excellent shape. It ran like a clock, and I can still see it going across the plowed fields over here in Tierra Rajada to go fight a brush fire or grass fire. It'd bounce around, and it was our only fire protection in Moorpark. Matter of fact, Simi did have a fire station in the old part of Simi. Not up at the Knolls only. It was only down there on First Street, I think, or California, maybe, in the residential area. So that about gives you a pretty good history of IG in the fire department.
Well, IG's wife, Mrs. Tanner, Adeline Tanner?
Yes,
Yeah.
that was his second wife.
Yeah, he said, okay. She and Blaine Gilmore owned a furniture store in town. The furniture store is on High Street where the veterinarian is now. And I still wish we had a furniture store, but we don't have it anymore. But they carry some good line of furniture, and they did a good business.
What were some of the other businesses in town through the years?
Well, the best business in all was Hall's Variety Store. It's on the corner of High Street and
Yeah.
Walnut Canyon on the.
Right across from IG Tanner's building.
Yeah.
They sold everything you could imagine in that hardware in the
And that
Hall's
variety
Variety.
It was a variety store, standard. Mhm.
He had, you can't believe what he had in that store. It's just amazing.
Yeah,
From
you
candy,
He'd have anything and everything.
from candy bars to
Picture
yardage,
frames.
yardage material and
Yeah.
clothes and boots and shoes and you name it. And you could hardly get through it for new merchandise, nothing used.
Of course, when I come to town too, they had Gunner's Drug Store, and
Which is now the bakery, whatever.
yeah, and Alta Summers department store was up by the post office, and she carried out a line of clothing, shoes.
Mm-hmm.
What was in what is now the Cactus Patch then, Jay?
Oh, Tommy Campbell had a restaurant.
After the war, Tom.
There was a restaurant in there
Tommy
then.
Campbell, he made the best hamburgers in the valley. If he keeps sober.
So it's been on and off.
Well, it was a drug pharmacy
Yeah.
originally when we came.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it was a pharmacy, and it sold the original. I can't think of the original pharmacist's name, but anyway, the second one was Lyle Holland, and I remember they were our next door neighbors for a long time. We had the doctor on one side and the druggist on the other, so we were pretty well taken care of medically. And that was the occupant he was up until World War II. When the war hit, everybody was shaky with can't get merchandise and this and that. And I think he had domestic encouragement to move because he could get a job anywhere being a pharmacist. And he also worked at the naval base over at Port Hueneme and moonlighted on the side with as a pharmacist, which was good. So they left Moorpark, and it was vacant during the World War II. But then a fellow came in right after the war, put in a drugstore, and it had didn't last very long. He had problems, and it dissolved, and he had it stocked and everything. And when he had to liquidate, why, Bart is correct. This Irene Bradley Jameson had married Tom, and he was a cook in the Navy, and so he put one half of the store. They didn't have a pharmacist, So there wasn't any pharmaceutical products, but there was all everything that went extra with the drugstore. And she ran the other side. Well, that lasted till they finally went out of business, and it turned out Tom kept it for a long time, and it's been a restaurant ever since.
Of some sort.
Of some sort, yeah.
Been
We've
a
had
donut shop.
we've had every variety of food offered. Matter of fact, we left it vacant a little while one time. It was too distressing to try to see people make a success. Yeah.
When they had Castro's grocery store, market, Ruben's father, Angel Castro, and Angel?
Joe,
Joe, yeah, ran the,
Joseph.
I think that was the only market. Well, that wasn't the only market, was it?
No,
There's
there's been a series of markets as long as your arm in Moorpark, going back to Adair and well, I can't think of them all right off now, but
Well,
a lot of them.
That building that Castro's has had quite an interesting history too.
Yeah, tell them.
Yeah, that
Well, it's now that hidden garden.
it was an
or whatever.
an auto parts store for a
Yeah,
while,
yeah.
and now it's the Hidden Garden or Secret Garden.
Secret Garden.
Yeah.
That was constructed by the Flory family, and they're the ones that owned. They built it. It's concrete block. They didn't do that, but the block work they put in all the carpenter work, and they were our one contractor in town, and built many of the structures and a few of the businesses in Moorpark.
One of my favorite memories when I first came to Moorpark, I stopped by the hardware store. Mary and I and Dave was just a little tiger. Got out of the car. There's a whole flock of chickens right in High Street. I don't know whose chickens they were. I think Ralph Mahan's folks or somebody lived there in the house just
Oh,
where
that
the
was the
Acidurian building.
A.D. Mahan.
Yeah.
That was another Mahan family.
Oh.
But long-time resident. There's
Yeah.
a lot of history there.
Yeah, I can remember that. I told Mary, I says, this looks like a chicken town to me.
Well, I one summer, the Spanish families and Duartes lived up on Charles Street, and they had a cow, and everybody would stake out their cows and let them graze in the volunteer green when it was grass was good. Well, I looked up one in the back of the store, and I looked up the front about 75 feet away, and here's a cow looking in the front door. And she looked mean. So I went out the back door, and I got the kid. I says, run up there to Manuel's. I think that's their cow. And tell him to come down and get it out of my front door. So he did. I gave him a quarter or something like that. And pretty soon, here comes a kid down and gets the rope. And he told us, he says, well, I'm glad you called me because she's mean.
Used to have a fellow called Tex Crawford.
Yeah.
He lived out the Beltramo Ranch, and he'd ride his horse into town. This is back in the 50s. He'd ride a horse into town, he'd tie it over there where the kiosk is now on High Street, and tie it up there and go in the restaurant and eat breakfast and shoot the breeze, and then he'd get back on his horse and ride out to Beltramo Ranch again. Did that every day.
That was half the day right there.
Yeah.
What about community events?
Let's see.
Well,
Those
like I say,
started,
the
before
Apricot
the war.
Festival was a big deal for a number of years.
Yeah, that started before.
Back
the
in the 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
Apricot Festival.
Yeah. They had a,
You know what that night do, James.
well,
Your dad was one of the instigators of it.
he, Dave Strathern, and well, Joe McCrae hadn't become significant in Moorpark at that yet. It was a little later, but he did. Yes, he did participate in one of the parades, and they had rodeos that they put on. This is just before the war, and we had competitive rodeo and had well, they started out just as a lot of things, a bunch of local fellas roping goats and anything they could get a rope on. And it grew and got interested, and it became a real Southern California almost professional rodeo. And the last one we had was about 1940, I believe. Maybe it was 41. And it was up where the water department in the county is, off of Walnut Canyon Road. The property there in the wells, that's where Moorpark got its water supply. They had wells up there. And because we started out with a very small, out of a spring on Spring Street. So I understand. Mrs. Gunner's book can explain that. But anyway, that started the Harvest Festival, and up and down High Street we'd have dances. We had one of the fellows that moved to town was Don Cave, and he was active in the radio business and not the movies at that time, but they knew all the contracts, and we'd get dances and had Martha Tilton, if anybody's old enough to remember Martha, come out and sing at one of the harvest festivals. The High Street, they'd rope it off the same as they do now. And it was we'd have, well, you can get in, Charlie knows more about the apricots, but you can get into that. They timed it with the apricots in the festival there. So there was an extra 4,000 or 5,000 people in town at that time.
And they were drying apricots and all that stuff in the fall.
All coordinated and the volunteer. There was and the rodeos were they put in that real good arena up there. It was a real dandy, but of course the war interrupted it and it never picked up again.
Well, I guess it was the late 50s, early 60s, they started what they call Moorpark Beautiful.
Right.
John Stillion, who's the teacher at the elementary school, he was quite an artist too. And they brought in irrigation, these big concrete irrigation pipes, and put in front of everybody's business and on High Street, filled it with dirt, and then put flowers in it, painted it green, and it looked nice for a little while.
Yeah.
And then they had a heck of a time getting rid of the pipe and the dirt after Moorpark Beautiful kind of faded out. But everybody, it was kind of like country days then, because it's called Moorpark Beautiful.
Had flags in them.
And the kids at the schools all had art
classes,
and exhibits, and it was quite a celebration.
I remember Dave bringing stuff home. Oh gosh,
Yeah,
all his artwork.
yeah.
It was a big deal for
It was a big deal for a while. Moorpark Beautiful.
Cleaned all the vacant lots up and planted succulents and all over town.
Right.
It really was beneficial to the community.
I think it helped. You know,
Gave you
Oh, it did.
Gave them pride.
I think
that
it changed the mental kind of outlook for a lot of the people in town.
definitely.
They just figured, hey, you know, this can be a nice place.
I guess country days evolved from Moorpark Beautiful.
It did.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the agriculture and how it
Yeah,
evolved
Charlie.
from the
Well,
Turkeys.
let's face it, it was an agricultural community, and still there's a lot of agriculture in the area. Apricots were big, there's no doubt about it, because they could be farmed dry land, which they did. The place that Mary and I are on now was dry farmed to apricots for many years, and Mary's grandfather worked for Del Monte and used to be the buyer who would come over to Moorpark and buy all the dried apricots. Story that my son just loves to tell was that he'd come over and bring the check after the fruit had been sold, hand it out to all the different growers in the area. And he was down here on what is now LA Avenue and talking to one of the growers, and the guy had some pigs. So he wanted to show Joe the pigs. So they were out there yakking away, and so Joe gets in the corral, and when he goes over the fence, the check was in his pocket and fell out, and the pig ate the check. Well, you can imagine Joe's consternation when he had to call Del Monte and tell him the pig ate the check. Oh, well, agriculture's a little different now. But during the war, the apricot business really went away because the chief buyer for those things was Germany. They bought them by the ton. So during the war, that market dried up, and so did all the apricot industry, really.
Well, then they had the big walnut warehouse in Moorpark.
Yeah. Well, then they were raising walnuts.
Yeah.
And,
It burned down.
No, no, it didn't.
They tore it down.
Yeah, they tore it
Tore it
down.
down, yeah.
Yeah. No, it always was a fire trap, but it didn't go up in smoke, fortunately.
well, and then as apricots and walnuts went out, because they just weren't paying enough money to pay the taxes on the property, why, I had to get into something else.
Hadn't the
Then they
tree-
were into chickens and turkeys for a
Chickens
while.
and oh, that's a big turkey.
The turkey deal
Turkey.
was a big deal.
Everybody was raising turkeys, yeah.
Curs were big in that.
The curs, you're right.
And,
Pages.
Yeah.
Waters,
Wa-
both Waters and Davis, they
Oh,
were
yeah. A lot of
related.
people were into raising turkeys.
Matter of fact, the school board was all raising them too. Everybody on the school board had a turkey farm on the side.
Then came the chickens.
Then came the chickens.
Then came the flies.
Yeah,
Boy, that was a something, wasn't
and Joe Latunsky.
it? Oh, man,
The
you
birth
could-
of the mosquito
Yeah.
abatement district.
I had a friend who lived out on Marine Lane. You couldn't see the side of his house what color it was for the flies. It just looked black. It was absolutely terrible.
Oh, that was, and so you guys downtown pulled a fast one on me. You sent them up my way.
Yeah, S and K up your
So
way.
I had to deal
Yeah,
with
S and K and
And
Bowman.
Goldman was the largest in the world at
Yeah.
one time.
And that smell went clear over to Fillmore, that chicken smell.
geez.
Boy, it was bad.
Yeah.
Joe Latunsky had a big fly put up on top of his car, huge fly he made, and he'd sit and park that thing downtown on High Street.
Yeah.
And
Had red eyes and it'd flash.
Yeah, it was Flytown for a while.
it sure was. They left finally.
Well, the thing that brought their demise was the cost of shipping grain
Yeah.
from the Midwest out to the West Coast in order to feed chickens. Why, it didn't take the egg producers long to figure out that, hey, we better move the chickens back to the Midwest. So that's what happened to the egg industry.
Well, they can thank Dennis Johnson, who put in the mill across the street from on High Street there, which is kind of an unsightly, not a very attractive addition now. But and I remember Alta Mahan that had the dress shop next to us. She had bought it from a Mrs. Howard, who put it in but before the war. But anyway, she bought it just before the war. and she was vocal about opposing Dennis on putting it in, but didn't have enough support to have it go anywhere else but right down in the middle of the business district. And I always thought, well, it was a shame. They could have put it, Egg City put their mill down by the high school, which wasn't near as bad there.
Yeah.
And this other mill could have done the same thing too, but now it's there and nothing will ever happen to it as long as the city's got control, I don't think.
Well, who knows what's going to
But
happen.
down at the end of Moorpark Avenue, on the south side of 118 or LA Avenue, Pages had a big turkey processing plant.
Yeah.
Huge place, and
It was.
they did quite a business processing turkeys.
Yep.
Um,
Buying and selling too.
yeah,
They had a broker that worked out of there.
Then they had that big pond out there where they used to dump all the
so
Water.
entrails,
Yeah.
what have you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a mess that was. Ooh-wee.
It was pretty bad. Oh. But they've employed about, several hundred people too.
Sure.
And it finally closed up. Pages, the turkey business was slipped off and it went into chicken processing for Campbell's soup. They were bringing these chickens in by the truckload out of the San Joaquin Valley. And layers, and they was retiring and making soup out of it. Well, it burned up on my wife's birthday. I remember so well. Big cloud of smoke about 12 o'clock. By 1 o'clock, it was down on the ground. It didn't take it long to burn up.
we used to have so darn many feathers in town from trucking in
Trucks.
those chickens, you know.
Oh, yeah.
God, they're flying all over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Tell me about it. They used to drive through the ranch.
Yeah. And then we had an ice house on Moorpark Avenue. We had a big ice house. What was that guy's name that delivered ice?
Vic Orr.
Vic Orr, yeah.
Yeah, he's the one the
Yeah,
most prominent.
he had a truck and he'd go around and deliver ice to people.
Yeah, they had another fellow. He came to see me. It's been 8 or 9 years ago, and they called him Boots Davidson. And he was when I was just a little kid. He was the most popular man in town because this truck. It was right across the street from where we lived. The ice house was, and they'd bring the ice from the where they made it in Oxnard, the Union Ice Company, by truck over, and they'd just take these big 300-pound blocks or better and slide them in there and kept it. It was a holding building, and anyway, Boots was very popular. He had a good personality, and he said, "I got to come back to Moorpark." So he did, and I was the only one that he could remember, and because I was across the street there, and the rest of our family had all passed. The people had passed away. We reminisced for a long time about being with the. So the ice house went in about 1928 or 29 is when they built it. I remember we still lived on Moorpark Avenue, another house. And I remember I wanted to go down there so bad my parents wouldn't let me watch them construct that thing. No, you stay home. And when they built it, they didn't have any ice in the whole valley. As a matter of fact, they was the only supplier for the whole east end of this county. There wasn't any in Thousand Oaks. There wasn't any Thousand Oaks, hardly, just 27 beer joints.
Well, when I came to Moorpark in 1950, we had the only bank in Moorpark for the whole valley. Everybody from Smee came to Moorpark to bank. We had the only theater in the whole valley. Everybody came to the show from Smee and surrounding areas.
A lot of kids came to school there.
They bused everybody from Thousand Oaks to Moorpark
Yeah.
High School, run a bus over there every day. Now they've all kind of all outgrown us, and we were the start of a lot of things in the valley. Moorpark was.
It was the only. No, go
Well,
ahead.
James, you might remember, wasn't it called the Star of the Valley?
Star of the
Yes,
Valley, that's
right.
right.
Hmm. Our only newspaper too, Debbie knows about that, was first started here in 1912, I think, by Cal Hoffman, and it was housed in the same building on High Street that the printer is right now, next to the vet. And we had the only newspaper, and for a long, it is now, the Star Free Press has bought it. It's now just a Star. But it burned out in 42. Also took us out, and a dress shop and a few other things. Post office wiped it out completely. My dad was postmaster in 42. And I remember he moved the post office, the vacant buildings down in the bank building, where on the corner. Anyway, he moved the post office and worked off of just 1x12 lumber. He took a few boxes. He couldn't bring all the mailboxes. I don't know how in the world he ever ran the post office. And you talk about security, there wasn't any. He was it, and his help and his assistant. But they managed to get it back into. We got it back into operation again. I can see the government standing for that today.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would never work. But we had the only doctor, we had the only pharmacy, we had we had the justice court with a judge, supervisor's office,
Jail.
yeah, we had a
That's right.
two stall jail on Charles Street, concrete.
The deputies forget somebody's in there once in a while.
Yeah.
Leave them in there for a couple of days.
Yeah. They'd come down and get breakfast and take it to them. Yeah. The same guy'd be in there the next weekend.
The local town drunk.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yes, there's a lot of stories can be reminisced about.
What were the schools like, James?
Oh, God. Charlie? Your wife is an authority on that, I think.
Yeah.
Mary is.
Yeah.
Oh,
She spent a lot of time in it.
well, the schools were adequate and they were good. But
Yes, you know, and back in the days when that's a whole story.
oh, yeah.
We had an elementary district and a high school district, and
They conflict.
a bunch of us got together and said, "Oh, we're going to unify it." And I can remember the people in Ventura saying, "Lots of luck," but we got it passed.
You bet. You bet.
Yeah, and that school district has done well since then.
Mm-hmm.
It really has.
Well, you know, the grammar school, elementary district had Arnold Myers. I remember Arnold
Right.
Myers was a superintendent. He was a turkey raiser.
Yeah.
He had a big turkey ranch, raising turkeys and
Yeah.
running the school, and had the teachers so scared of him that they dared not smoke. He'd fire them. You know, they couldn't smoke at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about drinking. I guess they wouldn't let that either.
They would need. They'd all go to El Tecolote Cafe out of town to eat so they could have a beer.
He ran a tight ship.
Yeah.
And what Prop Wilson, I guess, was a high school.
Oh God, my father was on the board when they hired him, and that was oh God, when I was just a little kid. It's very vague in my memory, but anyway, he stayed from about 1930 till after World War II, and then they had a little disagreement up there, and he and one of the teachers decided it's time to retire, and that ended his career in Moorpark.
When did Ev Braun come in?
Hevbron took over in about
Bart,
1950, 56.
Yeah.
56.
Yeah.
Yeah.
56. I know when we started Rotary. Rotary was started in 1956,
Right.
and he joined Rotary about 6 months after he came to town. So early 70, 57. So he came in 56. He stayed a long time. He stayed till
Till he retired.
yeah. What was that? When did he retire? 90? No,
I don't know.
about 1980 he retired.
Yeah, somewhere back there,
Yeah.
because he had retired before we unified the district.
But they had a series of, I remember, you like this one, Bart. I remember Dr. Holliday?
Oh yeah.
Bart had told me one day, he says, this new superintendent that's up at the high school, his name is Holliday. And he says, he's very straight-laced, sold on himself, very immaculate dresser and all that, and didn't fit in Moorpark really. I don't think he owned a pair of Levi's. But Bart told me, he says, I didn't make a hit with him. I said, introduced him, he says, I'm a Dr. Holliday, I'm the new superintendent. Bart says, I've been smoking you for years.
There's smoke holiday type pipe tobacco. Yeah.
And he, go ahead and
I
finish it.
I forgot all about that.
You forgot about that?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I never did. Some things I can't refuse. I refuse to forget. I thought that hits the nail on the head for Moorpark.
We got lost when we were talking about agriculture.
Yeah. Go ahead, Charlie. You can pick it back up.
Went from, well, at the demise of the turkey industry, why, that was about the time I moved to Moorpark. Started turning the ranch into a citrus
Profit-making organization.
avocado enterprise. But even that changes, world markets dictate what you can sell and what you can't sell. And
Yeah.
so at the present time, we're still raising tree crops. And that's still on the hill ground, that's about all you can do with it anyway.
So I think over the years, Moorpark has progressed pretty well. I think we've planned well.
I think it has done real well. It really has.
We have
A lot of that goes back, clear back when it was the Chamber of Commerce, basically,
Yeah.
Right.
that
Right.
ran the town.
That's
It
right.
was the quasi, elected body. And out of that came a couple of committees that were appointed by the Board of Supervisors to do the early and initial stages of the planning that includes right here where we're sitting. And
You're right, Charlie. Everybody in town belongs. You go to church, they're to church. You go to Chamber of Commerce, they're to Chamber of Commerce. No matter,
see the same people.
see the same people,
Yeah.
and they're the ones that really ran the town then.
Yeah,
And
that was, and it worked.
I
It
remember
really did.
one thing I remember is James's brother Bill, who's deceased now. We had a new supervisor elected, and he came into the hardware store and asked Bill what the town needed. And Bill said, "Well, the best thing town you could do is fix that drainage just down in front of my house." Remember that?
Yeah. So he did.
Yeah. So they did. They fixed it.
They fixed it. He had to deed a little 6 feet of a corner or something, but he was happy to do it. Got the mud puddle out of the water out of his front driveway.
Front yard.
Yeah.
One time there was a road foreman, Caltrans foreman, named Dewey Miller,
Oh.
and I was at the post office, and I was trying to get the get him to paint some green in front of the curb on the post office so people could park for 10 minutes and leave. And I kept after him and kept after him and kept after him, so he finally painted it, but he, just to get back at me, he painted the whole darn thing red. And he couldn't park anywhere from,
Yeah, that's
from
right.
the stores clear to the corner. And Whitaker Hardware would come in there and just chewed the heck out of me for painting. Nobody could park in the front of the store.
Yeah, yeah. Took a long time to get that red paint off.
So
there.
one time we, the curb, the sidewalk out in front of the store and the post office was cracking.
Yeah.
So James' brother Bill and I got out there with a sledgehammer, and we broke that thing up so bad they had to come back and repave the county, the state.
State.
Come back and repave, cemented
Oh, I'd forgotten that.
the sidewalk. So you
Yeah,
had to take things in your own hands back in those days.
Yeah, they checkerboarded it. They just left one piece here and one piece
Yeah.
there. So the local fellow that was the kind of the foreman of it, doing the dirty work, he left. He happened to leave his hammer sitting around, a big sledgehammer. Well, that went to work that night. Next morning, here come the white guys with the three-piece suits and ties. And they stood across the street in a big conference. There was about 7 of them, I think. And they'd look at the hardware store and the post office, and they'd look at the hardware store and the post office, and they'd talk, and they didn't have the nerve to come in. They knew what had happened. They figured it out. But they couldn't prove it. And nothing ever happened, of course, except they did a patch job again. And the worst part, I was thinking of it, the very same thing the other day, is that when the city came along and replaced there wasn't consistent concrete up and down High Street at all. There was a curb and there was a hit and miss operation, some asphalt and some dirt. And when they replaced it, they didn't tear this patch up job out. They just straightened the corner out a little bit and let it go. It's too bad they didn't tear it all out and put it all in new. But that's Moorpark City for you.
Bart, can you talk a little bit about the Little League and sports in Moorpark?
Oh yeah.
Well, what was it, 1956?
50. Yeah.
What year? Well, every city in the county had a Little League team except Moorpark. So I went to Rotary Club. I was a member, and I told them we needed to form a Little League here in Moorpark. So the Rotary said, okay. They'd furnish the T-shirts and the balls and the bats and the cap. So we started out with 4 teams. Would you believe we had trouble fielding 4 teams at that time? There wasn't that many kids in Moorpark. And we started with 4 teams, shirts, caps, and baseball and bats. And we played over at the Flory Street School. And Mrs. What was her name? Lived on the corner there. Elsa Summers' daughter.
Oh, Clements.
Yeah, Eleanor Clements had a house right next to the field, and every time a ball would go over to her house, she wouldn't give it back to us. So we had a little trouble with that, but and it just evolved from there. Rotary finally bought uniforms for the 4 teams. We had uniforms then, and it's just evolved from that. And I don't know how many kids they got now, 500 or 600 in Little League, I'm sure.
Oh, that's
But we started with about 30 kids. Every kid in town was a ball player that in those days.
I think the Rotary sponsored paid for the balls and bats
and the uniforms. They did everything
Yeah,
for it.
uh-huh.
Yeah. But that's about the way it started. We've gone a long way since then.
Well, the Rotary Club has started several things.
Sure.
Yeah. Started the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah.
It used to be, what was it called before Boys and Girls Club?
I don't think anything. I think that was it. That was the charter.
I don't remember
I don't
that.
either.
Well,
John Newton was kind of the,
John Newton and
Oh, yeah.
the druggist
Oh, Ken Lowe?
Ken Lowe.
Yeah.
Ken Lowe, yeah, there
Yeah.
you go.
Mhm.
There was a act. Well, it's Ken Lowe, he was
Yeah.
something else.
He was very active. He'd go down into Mexico and
He was a good-hearted guy.
good-hearted, very generous.
Well, you know what? Boys and Girls Club started. Ken Lowe, in the summertime, Rotary sponsored a thing for kids to get together in the summertime, something to do over at the school. That's where the Boys and Girls Club really evolved from, is that
Summertime
Summer.
program.
summertime program at the
Yeah.
Graham Flory School.
Huh.
From Ken Lowe, John Newton.
And that's turned out to be a pretty viable organization.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we started Cub Scouts 1950, I don't know, 56, 55. Started the Cub Scouts. The Methodist Church sponsored the Cub Scouts.
Yeah. Boy, I can
So you
remember
had
that.
Jane Waters was a den mother, and my wife Ernest was a den mother, and I can't remember who else was den mothers, but Jane was pretty active in the Cubs. Her and Jimmy, her son, was a Cub Scout. And so we did start things in Moorpark, you know.
Well, oh, my memory coming alive. I can add a little bit about the earlier days of the 30s and the Depression time. There was a there was a lack of course, there's all kinds. Steinbeck wrote a lot of stuff about that. And matter of fact, anyway, they started softball games. There was a regular kind of a league of softball teams, competition between the different communities, and we had one or two teams in Moorpark. They had a girls' team and a boys' team, I think. But anyway, the elementary school, Flory Street School again, was the only place that had a place to play softball, and those would gather a lot of people, and they put the lights in for it, and volunteered. You know, everything was done cheap because there wasn't any funds available, and the board would cooperate with the community. It turns out it's like one big family. They did squabble on getting a scrap once in a while, but they all got together too and worked together. And I remember those teams where the old Flory School was right on the same property. If a fellow could knock the ball over the school, he was really in the history book. But he knocked out a lot of windows on the east side of the building. There was always one of those getting knocked out with a home run. And that was another a cheap recreation. There wasn't any fees paid to anybody. They all paid for their own equipment, and there wasn't any fancy parades or anything.
Well, before television.
Right. Oh, how true.
And then we have some chords here.
How true.
Getting back to
Irene,
Well,
howdy,
How
Irene.
do you do?
good to see you.
I'll take this.
Yeah,
and push
nice
this
to
out
see
further
ya.
than yours.
I'm over here, Irene. I'm Bart.
Here's Bart.
Bart. Hello,
Yeah.
Bart.
Oh yeah.
You know
I am
Bart.
fine. Now it's your
see.
turn.
I'd be proud.
Getting back to the apricots. You know where Flory School was is all apricots, and and across the street was a drying shed, and we bought a lot from Flory's, who owned
They just opened that.
We bought a lot. Yeah, we bought a lot from them, and when we built our house on the lot, we had to pull out about 10 or 12 apricot trees to build our house. So it was all apricots down there then.
Oh, yeah. Well, it wasn't apricots or walnuts.
Walnuts,
yeah.
Theirs went, yeah, they went over to as far as Clements with the apricots, and then the rest was owned by Cornett, and all the way from Spring Street across, and from L.A. to the railroad tracks was walnuts.
That's where Walnut Acres is now.
Yeah.
It's all walnuts. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's how it got its name.
and the Walnut House set across on the opposite side of the railroad tracks. Well, just about with Bard Street. No, little right about where Castro's Market would have been. There's where the walnut shed was on the railroad siding.
Oh,
And the matter of fact, one of the historians of history people of Moorpark was the superintendent of the Walnut Association. Did all the books, paid the checks, and his name was Percy Wicks. He also was on the board of the Bank of American Commercial and Savings Bank. They had a regular local bunch of members that ran the bank for Phelps. It was in Los Angeles, owned the bank, and I don't know how I thought of that name, but it came out because it was
stirred
the
up
bank.
a little dust, huh?
Yeah, it was the bank. That was the bank until the bank of. It was sold to. I'll say it in a minute. Well, it was sold actually to Bank America, but they used a subsidiary banking system, bank outfit, and I can't think of the name of it now, as a cover because they were getting after them for expanding too fast, and it ended up with First Western, wasn't it? Called Charlie.
No, I don't- oh,
You remember? It was while you were here.
I know. I can't remember.
It was anyway. That dissolved that board and everything when it sold. They always said that he'd take all the money from Moorpark and put it in the pawn shops in Los Angeles.
What was the name of the tailor in town? That,
Oh, Peter Olson.
yeah.
Yeah, he was originally from Norway. Yeah,
'Cause
very.
I know everybody in the valley came to him for tailor work.
Yep, best tailor who's ever. He was on the corner of Charles Street and Moorpark Avenue, adjacent to where the present fire station that they just abandoned.
Yeah.
There was an old building there with about 3 windows in it, and he was
On the south side of the fire station.
south side of the fire station, right on that corner. It is. They didn't leave 6 inches space between that and the property line.
Should take a break now?
We're at the end of the tips anyway. It's good. Good
I'm
opportunity.
run down. I've said too much, Barb.
Terrible time.